A very good morning everyone. So today our topic of discussion is going to be electric load forecasting. So these are the points which we are going to cover today. So first we are going to discuss what is meant by load forecasting, what is forecasting first of all, and why do we need forecasting, and then the nature of electric power, what relevance does forecasting have with regards to electric power. So next is what is power system planning, how load forecasting is going to aid in power system planning. Next, what are the factors affecting the load forecasting, followed by challenges in load forecasting, and what are all the conventional methods that were used actually for load forecasting. Next, what are the modern tools and techniques, and what is the current scenario. Right. So to start with our discussion, let us first discuss what is meant by forecasting. So forecasting generally means prediction of future values. That future values might be a demand, might be sales from business perspective, like for example share prices, stock prices. So these are all also various things which come under the purview of forecasting. So you can predict actually any variable. Generally talking in technical terms, you can predict any variable. So that variable might be electric load, it might be weather. So various factors, various variables pertaining to weather. We generally talk about weather forecasting a lot, whether it's going to rain today or whether it's going to be sunny today, whether there's a storm coming up. So we used to discuss all those things. So that also comes under forecasting, right? So and stock and share prices prediction, sales prediction. So these are all very much needed business perspectives. So every company, every organization needs to predict or forecast how its sales is going to turn out, how its profit is going to turn out, and what are all going to be the deliverables for its stakeholders. So all these things can be determined by this forecasting. So and last comes this electric load. So electric load forecasting So it is the predicting the future demand or value of electrical demand or electric load in a particular area or for a particular region or even for a particular country. So what is going to be the demand, electric load demand in the near future. So that near future might be few seconds away, few minutes away, few years away, or few decades away. So the time frame is such a vast time frame. So all these come under the purview of electric load forecasting. Now why do we need electric load forecasting? It's because of the nature of electric power. The second and third reasons which I have written down here are interconnected. So what is the nature of this electric power? Is that you cannot store large amounts of electric power. Electric power has to be utilized, consumed as and when it is generated. You can at the max use batteries or another or some other energy storage elements to store some small amount of power, but not very large amount of power of the order of hundreds of megawatts or something. So electric power even today, that is the scenario, it has to be consumed as and when it is generated. So we know that generation of electric power, it involves certain important factors or points which need to be taken into consideration. First is the fuel. So when we use thermal power plants or when we use uranium based power plants or some other conventional power plants which are even in use today to a larger extent, though renewable energy has a very vital role to play, still conventional power plants and energy sources, they have still a major share of the power generation. So they need fuel to operate, like coal, uranium. Okay, so this fuel needs to be stored in the power plants and used as and when needed. So fuel, you know, the mining activity, it comes from mining activity, it comes from various activities, from drilling activity, from petroleum extraction, crude oil extraction, uranium enrichment. So all these will take time. So you have to plan, you have to pre-plan the stock of your fuel so that your generation goes on uninterruptedly. So in order to do that, what you have to do? You have to do proper planning, because you cannot store electric power and you have to generate it only when the demand is there. Otherwise it's a wastage. So that cannot be afforded since it involves cost. economics. So, electric forecasting becomes very much necessary here, load forecasting becomes very much necessary here. Why? Because you need to predict that this is going to be your demand, if not exactly, but at least to a nearby value. So, that is what is addressed by this forecasting, electric load forecasting, right. So, for proper power system planning, what is meant by power system planning? Power system planning is related to generation and load planning. What is the load we are going to have, and based on that what is the generation we are going to go in for. So, you cannot waste fuel and you cannot waste the resources. Generation not only involves fuel, it involves manpower, it involves technology, it involves resources, it involves time. So, all these things needs to be used judiciously. You cannot afford to waste. So, you have to do proper assessment of your load patterns, and you have to predict what is going to be the load in the future, so that the exact amount of fuel or near to exact amount of fuel that is required is only used and the fuel does not go waste. So, in order to do that you have to do load forecasting, right. So, now we have discussed what is the need for load forecasting. So, we have to schedule the generators. It is called as generation scheduling. You have to schedule the generators, you have to give a time frame of operation for all the generators which you use in your power system. There might be thousands of generators in hundreds of power plants which are put to use round the clock. So, these generators needs to be scheduled in a proper way. Okay, so that is what you call as power system planning. So, they have to be scheduled in a proper way for their operation, so that always your demand is met. And the problem here is not, you have to not just meet the demand alone, but you have to cater to the transmission losses also. So, you have to generate some extra power for that also. So, all these things to be coordinated mathematically and statistically. So, for that load forecasting is going to help us. Okay. So, we will first start with weather forecasting. So, what is weather forecasting? Forecasting when it is going to rain, forecasting when it is going to be sunny, forecasting when it is going to be windy. So, that is your weather forecasting. So, what are all the factors that would be affecting your weather forecasting? So, it will be sunlight, it will be some storm or thunderstorms that has come up, some deep depression or some cyclone. Okay. So, these are all some factors. Now, we have to quantitatively address these factors. So, we are so far discussing these factors qualitatively. You have to quantitatively address these factors, put it in the form of equation, and using that mathematical construct you can predict what is going to be the weather in the near time. So, that is what these weather forecasting models are doing round the clock. So, the same way we are going to apply the same technique to our electric load also. So, there are various factors that are affecting your load forecasting. So, the effectiveness of your load forecasting, it lies in how close you are going to predict, how close you are going to predict it. So, for that what we can do? So, our prediction can be naive, that is you can take it from previous year, yesteryear's data or previous months or previous days data. So, statistics comes into picture here. So, statistical analysis plays a very vital role. Statistical analysis plays a very vital role. Statistical analysis means historical data. Statistical analysis means historical data, that is using past data to predict the future data. So, yesterday the price of a commodity was some 5 rupees. So, today the price of that commodity is 10 rupees. So, tomorrow what will be the price of that commodity? Obviously, we will answer 15. So, because we have seen the pattern that there is a 5 rupee increase every day. So, we generally predict that tomorrow the price of that commodity will be 15 rupees. So, here we are using the past data, the historical data, the statistical data to predict the future values of our variable. So here there are various factors likewise which affects the load forecasting. So we have to ultimately achieve a closeness in prediction. So it should be very close to the original value. So once we get the data, actual data, when we compare it with the predicted data, then it should be very close. Minimal error should be there. Of course, we cannot predict it 100% right, but still it should, the degree of closeness to the original data, it decides the effectiveness of a forecasting method, how effective the forecasting method is. Okay. So what are all the different factors? So first, the quality of data. First is the quality of data. Our data should not have any outliers, means in the sense there should not be any data points which are totally unrelated to the set. Okay. So it should not have any outliers. Okay. So the data should have correlation, good correlation. Okay. So this is about the quality of data. With the historical data only we are going to predict the future values. So this is going to be the quality of data. So the next would be various other factors relating to the environment. So if it's going to be summer, then more load demand is going to be there, because all people will use the air conditioning systems, the refrigeration systems, the cooling systems and all. Okay. In case of winter, people might not use cooling systems, but they might use heating systems, they might use furnaces, they might use some heaters. Okay. So that would be there. So depending upon the seasonal patterns, this load prediction will change. Okay. And then there might be some other qualitative factors, like there is some big fair coming up in that city, or there might be some increased people activity due to a festival, or these might be certain factors. Okay. So human activity, followed by seasonal changes, so industrialization, these are some non-statistical factors, they are some qualitative factors which are not under our control. So you never know when the human activity in that particular area goes up. Some seasonal changes are unpredictable. Suddenly during summer also we get a rainy day, on and off rainy day, some windy day and all. And then industrialization, we never know when the industries will boost their productivity, production scale. When they scale up their production, they need the usage of machines, so their power consumption goes up. Obviously the demand will also grow, right. So and then last one is consumer behavior. So all these things will contribute to consumer behavior. Apart from that also there will be certain patterns. Okay. So just like how we predict sales and predict the other marketing variables with consumer behavior, we can also map consumer behavior to predicting our load demand also. Our ultimate aim is to predict the load demand in a proper way, in a very close way, so that we can schedule our generation properly and our resources doesn't go waste. So this is going to be our ultimate motto. Okay. So next is what are all going to be the challenges. So before going into the challenges, we are going to see the types of load forecasting. We are going to see the types of load forecasting. What are all the different types of load forecasting? So based on the timestamp, we are going to classify the load forecasting. Okay. So based on the timestamp or time frame, we are going to classify into very short term, medium term, and long term. So very short term caters to few minutes to few hours on the same day. So short term it caters to the prediction of few hours to few days. So next, medium term, few days to months, and long term from months to years. So very short term caters to the load forecasting for few minutes, next few minutes to few hours, short term few hours to few days, medium term few days to months, and long term months to even years or even decades. So each type of load forecasting based on the time frame, it has its own significance. So each caters to various processes in power system planning. So what are all the different processes in power system planning? First is you have to schedule the generation, you have to account for the load variation. So based on that you have to do reactive power control in your line, otherwise it might cause congestion, right. So and then you have to schedule the generation as I said earlier, and then you have to take stock of the fuel, you have to do maintenance scheduling, and then you have to do long term planning of increasing your installed capacity of power generation. So all these things are going to be aided by this load forecasting. So very short term load forecasting, one might wonder what is going to be there in the next few minutes, but it holds very big significance. So it is going to affect the live power flow through the line. So what we are doing is an online study, it is not an offline study. We are not going to switch off all the machines and take cognizance of the situation and then again switch on all the machines. So as and when the power is getting generated, as and when it is getting transmitted, as and when it is getting distributed and consumed, we are going to assess what is the situation, what is the demand and what is going to be the demand in the next few minutes, because we have to allocate transmission capacity for the power dynamically, because it is being generated and it is being consumed simultaneously, right. So for that, this very short term load forecasting is going to help, and let me tell you, this is the biggest challenge in load forecasting. It is not the long term or medium term, but very short term, because the variation of load will be very volatile, though taken at a very minuscule level in a very short time frame, but the volatility of load pattern variation will be more, very much higher in very short term load forecasting. So there is a lot of stochasticity. There is a lot of stochasticity there in the very short term load forecasting. So you have to have a proper prediction model. The biggest challenge for any forecasting engineer is this very short term load forecasting, because they have to account for the volatility in variation, volatility and variation in the power demand in a very short time. So next, followed by short term load forecasting, it is used to schedule and commission the generators. So these generators needs to be commissioned and decommissioned at a proper time interval, because it will take some time for them to get recommissioned after maintenance or other issues. If in case there is a fault in some generator, then you have to reallocate the generator, other generators, so that the demand supply gap is matched. So, for that you are going to use this short term load forecasting, and medium term load forecasting is used by assessing seasonal patterns. So, in winter the power consumption will be less, so that you can do maintenance scheduling for various generators. So, medium term load forecasting is used to assess over a longer period of time, duration of the order of months. So, it can be useful for maintenance scheduling of the generators, and you can use hydrothermal scheduling. You can use hydro power plants, when the hydro power plants will be available, when the wind power plants will be available. Generally hydro and wind power plants, they will be available only during the monsoon season or the windy season or the rainy season. So, the availability of water and proper wind speed. So, you need to check all these things before scheduling your generators. So, when you can utilize these renewable energy sources at the maximum. So, all these things will be planned using this medium term load forecasting, and then long term is used for power system planning. That is, means in the sense, in 10 years down the line or 5 years down the line, what is going to be the net increase in the load demand in a particular area. In some cities that there might be some population growth, or there might be some urbanization, large massive urbanization, so that the outskirts of the city will see a rapid increase in demand in some 5 years or 10 years due to people getting shifted to those places. So, what is going to be the net increase in generation that I need to go in for, so that I can cater to the load of this increased demand due to massive urbanization and industrialization. All these things will be taken care by the long term load forecasting. So, it goes for the time frame of a few months to few years. Why I said that this poses a very serious challenge is because of the volatility and stochasticity. So, the other three, due to the law of averaging, the random variations will get smoothened out. So, it is called as exponential smoothing. So, as time frame increases, the variation in load will get smoothened out when we take average load. So, due to law of averaging, the stochastic variation will get smoothened out. So, this can be even done by conventional methods, but this poses this very short term load forecasting, due to its volatility in data, it poses a very serious challenge for any forecast engineer. So, so what are all the conventional methods? Next we are going to discuss about what are all the conventional methods that were used. The first comes the extrapolation method. So, it just uses the statistical data and it draws a curve. It is simply a curve fitting technique. It is simply a curve fitting technique. So, you are going to plot all the data points and find the best fit curve, and if you extrapolate that curve, you might get the future trend. So, this is also known as trend prediction. So, it uses the regression methods, okay, so to predict the trend, right. So, next method is Shear's method. So, this Shear's method is going to take into account the different types of loads. So, whether it is going to give a probabilistic weightage for the different types of end user loads. So, if it is an industrial load, it will give a weightage, if it is a residential load, it will give a weightage. It classifies the loads based on the consumer. Generally, we call industrial consumers, commercial consumers as HT consumers, high tension consumers, and the residential consumers as LT consumers or low tension consumers, right. So, in industrial consumers, you have different types of consumers like commercial establishment, purely industrial establishment, agricultural establishment and like software industries. So each have a different type of need. So based on that, this Shear's method will give a weightage to different types of consumers, and based on that there will be a total prediction of load. So that is a Shear's method. Next is the end user method, wherein each end user is classified like the same, like it's somewhat similar to Shear's method, but the difference is that end users are classified and individual forecast is done for all end users. Rather than giving some weightage, pre-assigned weightage for each end user, you are separately forecasting using different models for different end users, and then you are augmenting all to get the total predicted load value. Okay. Next is the last one, the probabilistic determination method. Based on the probability of usage, you are going to predetermine what is going to be the load demand. So based on mathematical, the probability theory, and based on various end user requirements which was given in the past, so you are going to draw a probability function, or what is going to be the load using some mathematical probabilistic based methods. So these are the conventional methods. Now what is the scenario today? Okay, we are going to use modern tools and techniques. The problem still is same, the load forecasting problem is still same, the still relevant, but due to the diversity of loads and the massive loading pattern, the demand pattern, the problem has become complex. So you cannot resort to conventional methods alone to solve this problem of load forecasting. The massive data that is coming in, it gives a very detailed picture and detailed understanding of what is going to be the load patterns, which is becoming complex day by day. So we have, with the advent of electronics, with the advent of modern technology, the load patterns have only diversified to a very greater extent. It has been complexed, it has been become very complex and diverse. So we need new methods to address this problem. So obviously artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to come to our help here. So we are going to go for AI and ML based method, especially machine learning. We call it as ML. Machine learning is all about studying the underlying data patterns and predicting using the assessed data patterns. So that patterns will be read by a computer program and it will be analyzed, and future demand can be predicted. So predictive analytics is an integral part of machine learning. Which makes it a perfect candidate for load forecasting. So all these conventional methods can also be done using machine learning methods. So what are all the machine learning methods? You call it as a regression. You have a classification problem. Okay. So as far as regression is concerned, you can go in for univariate or multivariate. Univariate is using a single variable, probably it will be time versus the load demand. So that is used to understand the underlying pattern and it is predicted for future time frames. Whereas multivariate uses various other factors and you develop a regression model using machine learning techniques. The same curve fitting techniques which we had discussed previously, but now it is going to be done with the help of a computer. So the amount of data is very massive. So it can be processed with the help of a computer. So you will be having millions of data points. So that will be fed to a computer and it analyzes with the help of human intervention, with the help of human expertise. It will analyze and it will modify its analysis with respect to different challenges posed with the data, and then you can use to increase the quality of data by filtering out the outliers, and all these things can be done with the help of machine learning. And then finally you can draw a regression curve, and with the help of regression curve you can extrapolate and find the demand for the future. So what significance this classification problem has is you can classify the data points into different groups, like how we classified the consumers in our end user method. You can classify that and you can individually predict the load demand. So all these things are possible. Predictive analytics with machine learning becomes a perfect candidate with regards to load forecasting, and of course integrating AI with this will prove very much useful in the current scenario as well as in the future. So with this I have given a comprehensive outlook of what are all the different types of load forecasting, how load forecasting is significant, what are all the challenges posed by the problem of load forecasting and how it needs to be addressed, and what are all the factors, what are all the conventional methods, and also what is the relevance of modern tools for this electric load forecasting. So we will see you in another video sometime. So thank you.